Wonderful. Folks, how are you today? My name is Joe Didi. As you know, I do some stuff on Channel 15. I have a little radio show that I do once a week. And talking to my friend here, Jim Putnam, over the years, Jim has helped me tremendously on doing some of these events. And we said, hey, what are we going to do about Southwick? What about some of the younger folks? We need to get Charlie Pratt on, Jim says, and let's talk to Charlie about the old days. So, folks, we're going to bring you a series of several different folks throughout the year, and I hope you enjoy it. Jim?
Not much to add to that. I think we have a tremendous local history, very colorful here, and I so enjoy listening to people like Charlie and some other people that we've lined up tell their memories of what Southwick was many years ago. And it supplements the pictures and newspaper articles and things like that that we all enjoy looking at. So I'm excited to join you for this, Joe. Well, I think it ought to be good.
Technology has brought us here, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, literally, we wouldn't have thought of this years ago, and there'd be a huge production team behind us, and everyone would be complaining. Now, here we are.
And I can't think of anybody better to kick it off with than Charlie Pratt. I first met him when I was in my 20s, and he had more stories at that time. And he's been adding to them ever since. So I think he'll have some wonderful memories to share with us.
Have you hit Social Security yet, Charlie? What's your age?
88.
88. Wonderful. Still live in the same house you grew up in?
No, we lived on, at the time it was Foster Road. Now it's Matthew Road.
Oh.
My father lived over there with his first marriage and second marriage.
Nice.
And he married a foster girl, his first wife.
Literally.
Divorced her.
Well.
I got a half-brother who's dead now. He was in the Air Force for 25 years.
Gotcha.
So, Charlie, you've lived in Southwick your whole life?
My whole life. I lived over here where I am now since 1941.
Wow. That's quite an accomplishment. A lot of changes.
About 80 years.
80 years.
Charlie, are the taxes still the same? Just checking.
When we bought that house, my mother and father bought that house, the taxes were $49 a year.
There you go.
It ain't that no more.
No.
So you went to school here in Consolidated.
I went to school here in 41.
41? And
graduated from here in 49.
49, 8 years here.
And then went to Westfield High.
And what are your memories about attending the Consolidated School in those days? It was relatively new, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was built in 28, right? Yeah.
So what do you remember about going to school here, Charlie?
Well, we all carried knives. We used to play knife games out in the yard.
That's right. Back in the day, everybody had a jackknife, didn't they?
Everybody had a jackknife. We played knife games in the yard at recess.
Did anybody ever get hurt?
Nope.
Nope. Because people knew how to use them responsibly.
Yeah. Then we used to come down here in this room during the war for a bomb shelter.
Okay.
Line up against the walls.
How often did you do that?
I don't know, probably once a month, twice a month.
Who did they think was going to bomb Southwick?
We all knew, Germany.
Okay.
Germany.
Okay. And other than that, was there anything different about going to school during the war years than there was before or after, or was it pretty much...
Pretty much the same.
Okay.
Never knew there was a war on, actually, except what they talked about.
Was the class big?
What?
Your class, was it big? A lot of kids? Was there a lot of kids in your class back then?
No. We started off with in first grade about 32 kids. When we graduated out of here, we had 28, my class. One of the smallest classes they ever had. And I think there's only 2 or 3 of us left.
So in those days, it would have been one classroom for each grade, right?
You 9 classes in this school.
9 classes, and you went...
grade A.
What's that?
School, there was a class in that room over there.
Yep. the kind of the special ed class.
That was a
correct?
special ed class, yeah.
Yeah, what we would call it today, special ed. And I recall that classroom still being there when I attended Consolidated. So you got to know those 32 kids that you started the first grade with very well over the years, didn't you? Because you were in the same.
Well, there was only 28 when we left here. Some of them left for Catholic schools, and some moved. And we ended up with 28 in 8th grade.
Do you remember a few names of teachers that maybe?
Miss Pedrosian, grade 3.
Yes.
Who forgot her?
She was memorable, wasn't she?
Yes, she was.
She sure could play the piano, couldn't she?
She was good. She was a good teacher.
Yes, she was. Yes, she was. And I think she had started in one of the one-room schoolhouses, hadn't she? And then
I don't know anything about it. All
right
I know is everybody had her in 3rd grade, and everybody learned how to write with ink in 3rd grade.
Okay. Okay.
Because we didn't have no ballpoint pens in them days.
Any other teachers you remember like that?
Well, we had Mrs. Benway,
Okay. And what grade?
grade 7.
Grade 7.
Yeah.
And what was your memory of young Mrs. Benway? Because I had her a few years later in the high school. But how do you recall Mrs. Benway?
I'm going to say she was a good teacher, but strict, like she should have been. And she always wore gray. Remember that?
I don't recall her fashion statement.
Not the same one, but it was always the same color.
That doesn't surprise me. She was a very serious woman, wasn't she?
Yes.
And she took her education very seriously. But she had kind of a colorful life because I think she'd come from someplace in the Midwest to come here.
Wow.
But those are good memories. Any other teachers that you have a good memory of?
We had Mrs. Hatton,
Mrs. Haddon,
6th grade.
6th grade.
The 5th grade teacher, I don't remember her name, but I do remember a guy in our class who was tall, and she used to make us lay our hand over the desk and slap it with a ruler. He didn't like that. She lined us all up against the wall. He grabbed her by the shoulders, picked her up, and says, "Don't you ever hit me again," and he dropped her all the way to the floor.
And
She never hit us again.
So what do you suppose would happen nowadays?
She'd be arrested probably, huh?
Yeah, and probably the tall kid wouldn't have ended happily for him either, huh?
No, what never happened.
No, those are
Charlie Rodriguez was his name.
Okay.
I remember him. I remember most of the kids in my class, not all of them. I think Patty McMullen, she's a different name. George Holcomb,
Okay.
Sammy Lander, Dick Silvanel.
Any Arnolds in your class?
No,
No Arnolds.
No.
Okay. We're going to be talking
we
to.
had more girls than boys.
Okay.
I don't remember the girls because they
Okay.
were girls.
So what was it like to go off to the big city of Westfield to go to high school? What was that like?
Nothing different.
Nothing different.
No, we never went nowhere but in the parking lot and the building. Mr. Johnson drove us. My neighbor once in a while drove us, Clarence Hudson. Farmers. They're all farmers.
Yes, they were.
Oh.
A lot of them were dairy farmers. They milked
Yeah.
cows before they drove the school bus.
Right.
Changed up a little bit out of their barn clothes, but not much more than that. And then drove the kid. Picked up the kids. So was it a big deal to go to Westfield, or just more school?
Just more school.
Just more school.
That's all.
Okay.
Did you work through high school?
Huh?
Did you work through high school?
Work?
Work.
Did I work? At 12 years old, I was picking tobacco. Ty Arnold. He says to us, if you see any big cars come around of important people, run up the row and hide.
Even back then.
Even back then, you had to have a work certificate and be 14 years old.
That hasn't changed.
No, but we were there at 12, me and Sammy Lander. were there at 12 years old picking. We used to go in early. They started at 7. We'd be there at daybreak picking. We had $7, $8, $10 made by the time they got there. Piecework.
So was his farm on Sheep Pasture Road, basically? I know he had several different fields, but
He was 3 houses up from us.
okay. So around where the bend is with Point Grove Road.
The next house up. Now he's on the fairway of number 3 on the golf course.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then I worked for Feg after that.
How many years tobacco did you work?
Not too many. About 12, 13, 14. Then I went to work in the gas station with Clarence Hawley, pumping gas. Got 50 cents an hour.
Woohoo! Big money.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Did you have a car then?
I wasn't old enough.
That wasn't the question.
I didn't get a car until I was 16, and my father bought me from the neighbor across the street, Mrs. Stone. He bought me a 1933 Chevy 2-door sedan. Yep.
Bet you wish you'd kept it, don't you?
Well, I went into service in 53, last day of 54, February 54. And my father gave the car away to a farmer who cut it up and made a tractor out of it. Too bad.
It is too bad, but that was pretty common back then to use old cars for, they called them cut downs, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Cut down.
Yep. And even if Dad didn't use it as a tractor very much, it was a lot of fun out on the farm roads.
I never drove it to school. I just never did. Me and Sammy Lander went to Westfield one day in it. We're coming back from Westfield. We get to the Southwick Westfield line, and state cops pull us over. He told me I was speeding, doing 70 miles an hour, he said. Sammy Lander bent over and said, "This car won't go over 48 miles an hour." Full speed. Well, they were geared real low in them days.
Sure.
Well, the cop says, "Get out of here."
Just messing with a couple of Southwick kids, huh?
Yeah. But
So, thanks for bringing up that you served our country in the military. So, what branch were you in?
Well, I got a draft notice to be over to Springfield, February 15th, 54.
Okay.
After I got out of high school. I got over there, and I got ready to do the physical. I go in and they do an eye test, and I says, "I only got one eye," and he says, "Go home."
Okay.
So I came back the next day and joined. They would take you but they told me I couldn't leave the country. I had to stay in the country. So I joined, spent 3 years in the Army.
Well, thank you for that. Where were you stationed?
Well, I went to basic, Fort Dix.
Okay.
Then I went to Fort Monmouth, New Jersey to go to school. And then they sent me to Fort Huachuca, Arizona for 5 months. All of us, same guys. We got top secret clearances. Then we went to Dugway Proving Grounds in Utah. And that's where I spent the rest of my time. We did the weather. I was a weather observer, meteorologist, whatever you want to call it, for the Army. For the Chemical Corps was out there doing bacteriological and chemical warfare testing. And we did the weather for it.
Did you appreciate the significance of what they were doing at that time, or did they not tell you much about those?
They didn't tell us much, but we had a couple of guys got thrown out because of the top secret. They got caught doing something.
Okay.
But it was good duty. It didn't work very much, but when you did go out in the field, you were out there for 2 or 3 days at a time.
I bet it was hot.
Winter, hot, cold, any time of year. They did it, testing all times of year.
I don't want to change the subject, but I've got another topic that I'd like to move on to.
Sure.
I don't mean to ask all the questions, but
Go ahead.
okay. Well, I've always been fascinated to listen to your stories about Congamond and the aquifer in this town, because
Water specialist.
you grew up with it, and then sometime after you got back from the Army, you made a career of it, a living out of it, out of
the water.
helping people with their water needs.
Yep.
So, first of all, growing up, what was your favorite beach on Congamon?
Babs,
Babs. Why?
because it was there and it was nice. I was a lifeguard there for 2 years. So I had free roller skating and half price on food and all that stuff. But on days when there was nobody there, when you're a lifeguard, I don't know if you remember, but the high diving board. And if you went out to that and went out, swam out straight out for about another 7,500 feet, the water got extremely cold. So you could not swim down into it or swim into it, it'd bring you right back up. That's how the sandbar, the sandbar there? That's
Sure.
how that sandbar is formed because of that's the spring that feeds the lake, the big lake. 1 million gallons a day or better, I bet.
So what you said because it was the best beach and there was so much there. Can you describe a little bit? You mentioned high diving board, but it's hard for people now, even if they go by Babs on a boat, to imagine what it would have looked like back in its heyday. So what was going on there? What was in the water and up on the shore that made that such a special place to you when you were growing up?
The beach, he had a cement wall all along the back, and he had nice clean sand all along the beach. And you went out, he had one of them big rescue rubber rafts, upside down. So people could crawl up on it, dive off. Then there was another small wood raft, and then the high diving board out with a low board and a high board was way out. And it was roped off all the way around. And people came there. I mean, they came.
So on a nice Saturday or Sunday afternoon in July or August, how many people do you think were swimming at Babs?
You couldn't move on the beach. Probably 500, 600.
Yeah.
It was busy. I mean, busy.
The train was running back then, right? Was there a train?
No, I was after the train.
After the train.
Yeah.
So
I ain't that old. The train before me, they used to bring out
That's what I hear the stories of, that
Sure.
the New Yorkers and
the main train stopped on the South Pond area,
okay.
Congamon Station.
Congamon, South Pond area down by Saunders.
Yes.
That was the main train station for the tourists because it was near the lake. And where they went from there was Smith's Beach there.
Yep.
And there was Saunders Boathouse. They had a lot. Smith's Beach did a lot.
Miller's on the other side, right?
On the other side was, now that was closed time I got to the beach on the other side.
Okay.
Who was that? I can't remember who ran that. They stole on property in Southwick.
Oh.
On Sheep Pasture Road, a big piece. She had,
So where were all those people coming from? Were they from Springfield or
Springfield's where the train started from.
But in terms of the people that came out to Babs Beach on the nice weekends, where were they all coming from?
Well, the train started in Springfield
Okay.
and came through Westfield to Southwick.
Okay. So when did you start being a lifeguard at Babs?
Before I went into service, it was my last 2 years before I went into service. I worked with Clarence Hawley at the gas station, and I went to see Nell Bob one day, and he said, "Are you looking for a job?" I said, "Why?" He says, "I need a lifeguard." I got 75 cents an hour as a lifeguard.
Wow.
Where was the gas station?
Mobile.
Right across from the Congregational Church.
Right.
Okay. Yep. Yep.
It was a mobile station.
Yeah, it
mobile
was a mobile
station
back
at the time,
then.
yeah.
Next to the South Pond.
Clarence Hawley ran it.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's when credit cards first came out, and you had to write all the numbers in by hand. They had no machines.
So what other memories do you have about Congamon at that time? What it was like? Because it really was. It was a golden age for the recreational aspect of the lakes, and it was different than it is today.
Oh yeah.
Kings Beach was a big boat thing. They called it beach, but hardly anybody ever swam there.
Okay.
You know, mainly with boats. And they made their own boats and sold them there. You know, they made boats all winter and sold them in the summer.
So basically rowboats or power boats?
Power boats,
Power boats. They were making their own power boats there.
16, 18 footers.
Okay. How many horsepower engine do you suppose?
I've seen them with a 75
Wow.
Back
Sure.
then.
back then.
Wow.
They were all made out of wood,
All
plywood.
all made out of-
They made them over in Feeding Hills and stored them in that. Well, they had a dance hall there at one time. You remember?
I don't remember that. Whereabouts would the
Well-
dance hall have been relative to the beach?
Straight back, about 200 feet
Okay.
into the woods. It was the same size as Babs's roller skating rink. And they used to have dances there, dances at Babs, and one other place. Had name bands come to Babs Beach. Had name bands come there back in the 30s.
So was that still going on in the 50s when you lifeguarded there, or that
No, just roller skating.
just roller skating? By the way?
Roller skating and swimming. People used to come out just to be out there.
So let's go back to your story about where the massive freshwater spring is there in Middle Pond.
Yep.
And, there's a lot, I think still is a lot of confusion about how the water works in and underneath Southwick. So you've got the lakes on top of the aquifer, is that right?
There's got to be a spring down there that's putting out. I mean, no way could I swim down it.
Yeah.
I'd swim in the side of it, and it pushed me right up.
Yeah.
I mean, it was powerful. And I was only, 17 years old then. I could swim good.
Good enough to be a lifeguard. I guess you could swim well.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's pretty much where all the water in the Congamon comes from. It doesn't come from South Pond or North Pond.
North Pond's got to have something. I think South Pond's got something too, but I can't.
So how does that feed into the aquifer where the water supplies are?
The whole thing is underground going out. Goes all the way to West Springfield, Westfield, Waterworks.
So in that aquifer, do you think the water flows north towards Westfield or south towards Granby?
Towards Westfield.
Towards Westfield.
Oh, you remember when North Pond went to Westfield?
Very quickly, we're going to talk about that in a couple of minutes.
Oh,
But yes, it did in a hurry, didn't it?
yeah. And that lake refills itself.
How long did it take to refill after the 55
Flood.
washout?
Yeah, 3 years, I think.
3 years. That tells you something, doesn't it?
That's the deepest lake.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you want to ask anything else about the lakes?
Where's all the bodies?
What bodies? What bodies? You know, I was lifeguard there for 2 years, and we never once I had an incident.
Never.
Never. People were good. They were good swimmers. Once in a while, a young kid or something would come up and grab the boat and rest, because we were in a boat a lot of times.
Oh.
If I recall correctly, a lot of senior class trips from Springfield schools and elsewhere came out to Babs. I don't know where they go today, but I don't think they go to the lake. But
No.
it was a big deal, and every once in a while you'd hear stories in my time about somebody, some wise guy from Springfield that didn't appreciate, that their lakes and
Southwick kids.
bad things
Yeah.
can happen.
Yeah.
That get in trouble. But so let's talk about the 1955 flood. Were you back in?
I didn't hear about it until at least a week or two after it happened.
Okay, so you were
I
still
was in
serving.
Utah then,
Okay.
Yeah.
and I called my father up, mother and father up. I didn't send letters. I called them once a month, twice a month, and they told me about the flood.
And do you recall how they described it to you? Because the they were pretty close to where the Great Brook.
Well, the Great Brook came up within, the house below had over 2 or 3 feet in the first floor.
yeah.
It came up to my driveway 2 feet high. That's what they tell me. You know, most of the flood was caused because a chicken coop went down and plugged the railroad bridge.
Is that right?
And my father, who was a dynamiter, offered to get rid of it, and the state wouldn't let him.
Is that right?
They said it was too dangerous. So
Compared to what?
yeah,
Yeah.
So I don't know how long afterwards the water finally broke the chicken coop, and the water went down.
Wow.
So, but other than flooding up into the driveway, there no damage to the Pratt homestead.
No,
No.
the one below me was a nursing home at the time. We had all the patients up all my. This is what I've been told by
Sure.
my father. All the patients were all over our floor in the house. She had like 9 patients down there.
So when did you get back and see what the damage had been from the flood? Southwick must have looked a little bit different when you came home from the Army.
I got back in February. I went in on February 16th. That was my 19th birthday. I got back March, because I went to Florida when I got out, because my mother and father and everybody were down there. And I got back up here around March, and everything was back to normal by then.
Okay, they rebuilt.
That was 57.
That was 57. Okay,
Yeah.
so they put the bridges back in.
They had to put a new bridge down by my father's house down there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of new bridges in Southwick in 1956, 57, weren't there?
50, yeah.
Probably the original bridges today on some of those.
Oh, I think so. I think
Yeah.
if you went and looked at the,
Stamp.
the
Yeah.
stamp, they're as old as I am anyway. So how long did it take them to build the dam on North Pond to keep that?
I wasn't here.
Okay, but it was done by the time you came home.
Oh, everything was done.
Okay.
The only information I got is when I called home. And we didn't discuss it too much after the flood was over.
So 3 years, though, for North Pond to completely refill.
That's what I thought. It was refilled by the time I got.
Okay.
When did you decide to go into the water business?
I took over my father's business. When I got out of the service, I went to work for him. And then he retired and went to Florida. And I took it over and I ran it up until I was 86 years old.
Just the other day.
Yeah, over 2 years ago.
There you go.
So a lot of those wells out there were drilled and serviced by your business.
Yep. I did most of them. I went on most of them until I got up in the early 80s, and I hired another guy to do it. I had a good worker named Richie Reed.
Yes, you did.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he took care of things for me.
He still does. He's still out there.
Yeah, he's still out
Servicing
there.
all your wells, including
see
mine.
I
Yep.
see him. But I did a lot of wells in the last few years, mainly irrigation. I got a call from Hadley, Hatfield area one day. I went up to see a guy, and he wanted to water his greenhouses. And we're talking about it, and he says, "Oh, whatever it costs, I get paid for by a federal grant." You know, so I bet I did thousands and thousands of dollars worth of work up in Hadley, Greenfield, Deerfield, Hadley, and I got recommended to do the wells by a girl who used to live in Southwick, who worked for the federal government up in Amherst. I don't know who she is or anything. Never found out. They never told me. But
Were you
and they're still doing those wells up
They are.
there.
were
Yeah.
you on the fire department at one time?
I was on the fire department 28 years. 20 years legal. Newt Prifty came to me and asked me if I would get on the fire department, and they had no vacancies. They were only allowed 35 people. He says, we need somebody to drive the truck who lives close by.
Yeah.
So for 8 years, that's what I did before they had a vacancy. Then I got on. 20 years. 28 years total.
Just drove the truck?
The first 8 years, no, I did fires, but my main job was to drive the truck.
Get to the station
go.
and get equipment to the fire.
Yeah, because I live right back of it,
Okay.
and I was there, and I always drove the old Fog, Ford, 48 Ford.
Yep.
What was the most difficult fire that you saw in your time on the fire department?
Tobacco barns.
Yeah.
Over in Long Yard, we had 3 barns go at one time. And the truck was in between them.
Ooh.
And there's all shrubs. Driving, doing them all. Just about get out of there. And I'm thinking, you ever see a tobacco barn burn? If you're in one end, you won't make it to the other end.
Yeah.
That's how fast they go.
Yeah. Were these 3 loaded at the time?
No.
They were empty.
Empty. The fields weren't being used.
Yeah.
There were 6 barns there altogether. So they didn't bother putting the 3 out. They went to the 4th one and
Yeah.
sprayed it.
Yeah. Once they start, they're
Yeah,
gone.
they're gone.
They're gone. So, what do you want to talk about Nucci Prifty a little bit, because clearly he had a big impact
Nucci.
in this town.
Okay. Go ahead.
So what do you remember about Nucci Prifty?
He did a lot for the town. Extremely a lot. He was good on the fire department. He had a hell of a business.
He had the tow truck business back then, right? And the new
Donnie
car
had
deal?
the tow truck business.
Oh, Donnie had it.
Yeah, that's Prifty Garage.
Right. What'd Nucci do?
They ran a mechanical garage.
That was the Atlantic station, if I remember correctly. The
What?
Atlantic gasoline station, right?
I don't know. My brother had the gas station across the street, the Essel,
Okay.
at one time.
Yep.
And he was, after we got in that Essel station, Prifty went out of the gas business because he had a little problem with it. But we got a guy in here that I'm going to play cards with today, worked for Prifty.
Oh,
Said he was the best guy he ever worked for. Treated him like royalty. He did transmission work.
My understanding, and this is what I heard, so you can correct me now, but back in those days the ambulance service was completely volunteer, and it was not uncommon for at least the daytime runs that would be Nucci Prifty and Clyde Jones, because they lived right. They worked right.
They worked right there.
They worked right there, and so
Yep.
when
Right.
the ambulance call came, they were the ones who most times
Yep.
drove the ambulance.
well.
True.
So that was back when Southwick had kind of a working downtown of local businesses, and that was part of the deal. The fire chief was
Yep.
at Battistoni's, and Nucci was at his service station, and
Yep.
Clyde Jones was running the
Store.
and they all
Got it done.
dropped everything, and
Yeah.
probably there were times when they left the store
Wide open.
Yeah.
to go do a fire or
Sure.
ambulance run.
Yep. We had the first ambulance was a 1939 LaSalle.
There you go.
And that was probably a big deal for the town of
Oh,
Southwick.
a big
huh?
deal for everybody.
Yeah.
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 Did you get to drive that?
No,
No.
I never wanted to go on the ambulance. I went one time, or I got asked by Prifty to go on it one time. I don't know if I should say this, but the guy, the Corona Farm,
Yeah.
remember that?
Yeah, I do. Now Westfield River Brewing.
Yeah. Some car had rolled over and the guy was dead. And he was laying there like this, dead. Nucci says, we got to get the guy out of here. He said, grab the arms, and I'll grab the leg, we'll put him on the stretcher. I grabbed the arm came off, and I says, no more.
Yeah.
Bad experience.
Bad experience. I didn't want nothing to do with the ambulance.
So what other great stories do you have about your life in Southwick that we haven't already covered, Charlie?
I don't know. What? I had a...
I think, and you can correct me, I think you grew up in the Congregational Church.
Congregational church right over here.
And you have a long history there. But then later in life you were affiliated with the Roman Catholic Church across it. No, okay.
My wife was Catholic,
Okay.
and I went with her once in a while, and she
Okay.
went with me there.
Okay. So what do you remember about the Congregational Church growing up? That's going to be 250 years old. Well, actually, it is 250 years old.
275 next time.
Um,
I remember me and George Holcomb collecting money as teenagers in the church every Sunday. Nobody else would do it, so we did it every Sunday for all summers, 2 summers in a row.
how many people were going to church there back at that time?
More than now.
Yeah.
Seats were almost always filled. Some people upstairs even.
I laugh because when I started doing Thanksgiving meals a few years ago, this young man gave me stories about, what did you have, a chicken dinner back then? What were you doing?
I was cooking at the church up to 200 people. I did started off by doing it for pumpkin carving contest for the kids. And we had about 140 people show up. Mr. Brosker gave me the pumpkins, and I charged them $2 a piece back then, and made money.
Yeah.
Enough, because I got donations. Somebody gave me the potatoes, somebody brought pies, they did, somebody else. And we had a supper. And at one time I cooked prime rib for $4 a head for 200 people.
So when did they start building the Roman Catholic Church that's pretty much kitty corner across the street from you, Charlie?
I had to be about 10 or 12 years old, I
Okay.
think. Because I remember me and my brother, they were digging a cellar hole. They didn't have equipment like they have today. They had an old steam shovel, gas, but big, clumsy thing. And it was down in the hole. Me and my brother went up there and he started it. We couldn't find out how to shut it off, so it ran all weekend.
Must have had a pretty good tank on it. No.
Yep. Yeah, it idled there all weekend. Nobody could hear it down in the hole. Never had a problem with that church. I own a gravel bank across the street. And anytime I tell anybody who was hauling, anytime any activity is going on in that church, you're done. I don't want no noise, no trucking or nothing while they're working, while they're in the church. So we've been having a good relationship with that for years.
Was there one of the fathers over there that was a particular favorite of yours?
Father Menji.
Father Menji. And he was there for a long time,
Long
wasn't
time.
he? I think
They use my land across the street for parking.
Sure.
And he came to me one day, Father Menji did, and he says, you got to stop them people from parking over there and put up signs. I says, not me. I says, you put the sign up and sign your name and you be the no good. Never got the signs up.
No.
So, lots of great stuff here, Joe.
Yeah.
Do you want to go to the last question, or do you want to...
Go ahead. What's the last question?
Well, it's a two-parter, okay? So, tell us one or two things about Southwick that you think have changed for the better in your years, Charlie. And maybe the answer is nothing, I don't know, but a couple of things that have changed for the better, and then I'll come right back and ask you a couple of things that you think have changed for the worse.
When I went in the service in '54, there was about 1,100 people in this town. When I got out, there was about 1,300, 1,200, 1,300. And then boom.
Yeah.
I don't know any bad things, really bad
Okay,
things.
that's good. That's good.
No. All I know is the population grows, 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 grows.
We see houses in places we never imagined, don't we?
Yeah, and I got about 30 acres over there, and it ain't for sale.
Okay.
All right.
I had a realtor in my house this morning wanted to talk about buying it, and I says it ain't for sale.
Good for you. Good for you. Well, you've always done things on your own terms, so I'm glad you're still able to do things on Charlie Pratt's terms.
You know, I was on the finance committee with this guy here,
Yeah.
and I was on the conservation committee. Me and Woodruff,
Woody Woodruff.
F. Henry Wolf,
Yep.
a guy named Brown.
Yep.
We were the original starters of the Conservation Commission. Not for conservation, to stop West Springfield from using so much water out of Southwick.
Wow.
That was the whole object of the Conservation Commission when it started. It didn't work.
No. No, no, it didn't.
But he had a stack of papers like that on that,
Wow.
on the lakes and the brooks and everything in this town.
All right, well, we're going to get ready for the next guest. We
I hope so.
appreciate your
I'm
time.
going to go in the other
You're
room.
going to go in a room and say hi to your friends?
Yeah,
Yeah, we'll leave it at that.
there's 3 of them in there.
There's 3 of them in there. All right. Thanks, folks. I hope you learned a little bit about Southwick, and we'll be back shortly.